on this. All righty. Is everybody here? Not everybody is here yet. But it's 2 minutes after the hour and I want to go ahead and start because this is an incredibly important part of the program. First, I want to discuss a common phrase, cliche, slogan, motto, whatever you want to call it, about fundraising. And it is no money, no mission. Right? There's a whole lot of things you can't do with your nonprofit unless you can fund them. So that's one of the reasons we talk about ideal donor profile. And I want to take you all through a little exercise that I call the opportunity risk calculator.
Ellen, sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you're recording or not. Can you just double check that?
I am recording on my machine.
Oh, on your other thing? Not on the
No. I just have it says recording is on.
Oh, okay.
It says it's recording for us too.
Yeah, I see that it's recording. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
So raise your hand if you think you work real hard. You put in a lot of hours, right? Okay. Find us a nonprofit professional who isn't constantly overworked. So here's a little thing I have to share with you. Remember, we're talking about the ideal donor profile, and I want to show you something about how expensive your time is. You all okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
A copy of this is available for you to download and play with. So good old Uncle Sam believes that we work, or the IRS, I should say, that we work, what in the world? That we work 2,000 hours a year. The basic calculation is that you work 40 hours a week times 50. So maybe my numbers are off. But it says here, total number of hours in a year, except for weekends, is 2,088. Now, I know you're all going to say to me, yeah, we work on weekends too. Well, for the purpose of this exercise, let's pretend you don't work on weekends. Why don't I want you to work on weekends, boys and girls? Speak up, somebody.
Burnout?
Because I want you to rest, okay? If you work too hard, you're no good to anybody. By the way, there's all these little comments here. So we take the weekends out. Now we're going to take out the holidays. Now, these are not just the holidays in your employee handbook. These are holidays you really take off. For example, if you're an Orthodox Jew, since I'm Jewish, I know this. There's lots of holidays where you fast and you're not allowed to work. So let's say, I know federal holidays, about state and federal is about 12, but I'm going to give everybody 15 holiday days. Now, I'm going to give you all 2 weeks vacation. You don't have to take it all at the same time, but we all need vacations. I hear somebody's voice in the back saying, I haven't taken a vacation since 1973. Now we're going to take sick days. So these are days you're really sick, days someone in your family, your kid or your dog is sick, and days that you just can't stand it and you're not going to work. You know, we call those gently mental health days. So let's give you another 10 days. Now, this is where one of you can tell me how many days in a week or a month do you devote to prepping for board meetings or other administrative tasks? Pascal, give me a guess. Is it as much as a day a week?
I would say.
Okay, so that's 50 weeks. So that takes 50 days out of Pascal's opportunity to raise money. How many days do you devote to travel? That is going to a conference or some kind of offsite. So we figure if you go to any conference, probably takes you the day before and the day after to travel to the conference, and 2 days at a conference. So should we just say you go to one conference a year? I'd like you to go to more, but here's 4 days. So 4 more days that Pascal cannot devote to fundraising. And oh, sorry, I did that wrong. 2 days for travel, 2 days for the conference. Days you devote to managing programs or staff or service delivery. Pascal, let's just use you as a guinea pig.
Okay,
How
but
many
tell me
days a
again,
week?
so managing programs, so wouldn't that be actually working? I mean,
Yeah, doing the service delivery of your work.
that's most of it. If I'm understanding the question correctly, I mean, that would be
Yeah.
4 days a week, I mean, for sure, right? Unless I don't understand the question. Okay.
Oh, you got it. That's fine.
5 days, 6 days.
So we already took off. We're not letting Pascal work on the weekends, Emery. So then there are always, I'm going to give you 5 days. Oh, 4 was wrong. I meant that 4 would be in a month, in a week. So 4 times 50 is
200.
So we'll give her 150 days because we don't want her to be in negative numbers.
Right. Well, because I did that one day where I'm doing the admin and prepping and yeah.
Right. Okay. So this tells us Pascal only has 136 hours left to devote to fundraising, unless we're going to let her work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, which we don't want to do. I'm sorry to say this, Pascal, but I know you personally, and I know you're not in the first blush of youth. And even if you were, I wouldn't want you to work 80, 90,
Thank
100
you.
hours a week. Okay, so how much would you like HEP to be raising under, if everything were perfect, forget how long it would take you to get there. $500,000, $250,000?
$500,000 would be very good.
Okay, so now, did I put too many?
No, that was right.
Each of Pascal's 136 hours that she has available to raise money puts 3,600, actually 3,700 if we round it up, at risk. So let's say Pascal devotes 2 hours to raising a grant or an individual gift worth $1,000. What has she done? Has she earned any money or has she lost money?
I don't understand.
Yeah, can you say that again?
It's a loss.
Lost money.
You have 136 hours.
Right.
Each of those hours puts 3,000, rounded up, $3,700 at risk.
Okay.
You start to cultivate a gift or grant worth $1,000.
Oh my.
Why did you say that, Semery?
Well, because if you're spending 2 hours to raise 1,000, but
And those
you
hours
you're
internally
putting $3,700 at risk times two.
times two,
That's why I said, oh my, because it was like, almost
it slaps you in the face.
8,000. It's getting close to 8,000
Almost
at risk,
$8,000.
and then you're just asking for 1,000. Mhm.
Think about that, everybody. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'd like to get some feedback before we jump into our first of all, does this give you any insight into why we need to have an ideal donor profile? Why do we need to have some clarity about who should receive our marketing messages and who's worth our scarce and precious time?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can really follow how you got to that 3,600 plus, but it makes
Math is real
sense.
simple. I took away all the time Pascal had to devote to other tasks.
And
then I took the remainder, and by number of hours, not by number of days, and divided 500,000, which would be the terrific
ideal
ideal amount of money
Yeah.
to run HEB
Yeah.
by 136 hours. So that means this was a totally, this calculation, any accountant in the world would fall over dead and say, this is ridiculous. This doesn't mean anything. It's a great metaphor to show you, if you want to raise money, you have to devote time to it. And you'll waste money if you're chasing the wrong funding source.
Right. And even, I mean, the insight that came to me is, it gave a new power to this. Am I working harder or am I working smarter? And so if I don't even know, who's the best person to go after, and if I don't know what makes sense to ask for, the level, right? Then I'm not conscious. It feels like I'm busy because I am doing
I'm
doing the fundraising
busy, but I'm not getting results.
Yeah.
Shedley, do you have a comment on this? Did this give you an eye opener?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like you felt my brain, huh? Through the
I put
Zoom.
my clammy little fingers right into your brain.
Yes. So do you calculate it per person, or what if you have a team of people?
There are two ways to do it. One way to do it is to have the CEO or the ED do it for the whole organization, because you're responsible for them. But what we usually do when we have a team of people, including volunteers, is to break up the amount of money we need in chunks and say, Mark is responsible for this percentage and Simmereed is responsible for that percentage. And if they're volunteers, the percentage should be smaller because they're not going to be doing it as a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
So this calculation also has relevance if you're more comfortable today going after grants. Is it worth it for you to go after a $10,000 grant when you can spend the same amount of time and energy to go after a $50,000 grant?
Mm.
Now, so there's a great deal of effort to design the ideal donor profile. I'm going to give you a way to start. And you'll notice in the master calendar for our cohort, once we get into Glenn's section, there's one lesson that's totally asynchronous, but I'm going to use our time as a second hour to help you work on your ideal donor profile. So let us, now I did it wrong as usual. Let us, oh, Ellen, you're such a pro.
While you're doing that, I'll just jump in and say that date is January 5th.
Thank you.
So you have set January 5th, that hour aside to be like office hours. So an additional workshop for people to be able to come
Right.
in here and work more on their ideal donor profile. Glenn will have material that week, but he doesn't have a live session. So that gives us an opportunity to do both.
How did I unshare myself? Okay, this is what I look like in actual fact. Oh, God damn it, Ellen, you're really dumber than
You look cool, Ellen.
Yeah, of course. Why would I not want to look cool? Just because I'm older than dirt, I think is the expression goes. So this will make sense to you. If you don't have an ideal donor profile, you're shooting in the dark and you're wasting time. And now you have an idea of how much money you're putting at risk. Think of that opportunity risk factor as a soft cost. Does everybody understand the difference between a hard cost and a soft cost? A hard cost is something you can see going out, you put money down on the counter. A soft cost is, what I just showed you. So who's the ideal donor? By the way, can you all see this?
No, Ellen, you're not currently sharing. We see each other, but we do not see your screen.
What in the name of all that is good and holy?
So while you're
I'm
doing that, I'll
so
share another.
sorry. That was clever. Share screen. Let's just start here.
Something's coming. There you are. Now you are sharing.
Okay. So what's an ideal donor? You can read this. The perfect donor for what your organization stands for. Some people refer to this as an avatar. Okay. So it's a fictitious donor or grant maker or corporate sponsor. And the key words here are best fit to invest. Because we don't want you to waste your time with people or institutions that aren't going to give at the price you'd like them to give, or are going to be a pain in the nether portions. We've been running something called the leaky bucket assessment since 2011. And there is a link in the homework. I would like you guys to take this assessment. It's free. And it's been telling us for years that about 84% of nonprofits lack a documented ideal donor profile. Another 18% only look at the capacity. That means how much the donor or other funder can give you. And only 6% have a profile that includes capacity to give plus motivations for giving. And that's what we're going to talk about. So there are 4 steps to building the ideal donor profile. One is to clarify your value proposition. One is to describe the factual characteristics of the ideal donor. The third is to research the values, and we call them value statements. They can also be called value added or value sought rather, or they can just be called motivations. And the 4th step is, what don't you want in a donor? Okay, that's a lot of fun. So we're going to run through this pretty fast. Your value proposition is what it is that makes your nonprofit worthy of investment. Does that make sense, everybody? I once saw a website of a nonprofit, it was actually a faith-based nonprofit, and the homepage said, blah, blah, name of nonprofit. Here is how to ensure you get a tax deduction from making a gift. It didn't say what the nonprofit was about, and it didn't say anything about why investing in it was a good idea. I don't know what they were thinking. So I'm going to show you an exercise that I would like you to perform. Okay? And it looks like this. The value proposition, in business terms, our value proposition is sometimes called our value added. Has anybody ever conducted a SWOT analysis? Speak up because I can't see you.
Yes, I have.
Okay. So you know that a SWOT analysis stands for internal strengths and weaknesses and external opportunities and threats, and it's usually used in strategic planning. We're going to do a SWOT analysis. We're just going to look at the internal strengths and weaknesses. And the template for this, it says it's in your packet, but it's on Circle. And it looks, oopsie, I thought I had a copy of it. Let me just stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to show you a real version of a value proposition analysis conducted by a client of ours, much bigger organization, okay? So this one, I'll tell you the name of the client. It is an academic association called the International Studies Association. It's a jillion years old, and they raise millions and millions of dollars. But they did this. Well, lots of people, you know, our membership, many of our members consider us, instead, they're all professors or grad students, right? Considered by many members to be their academic home. I don't care if you read what this says, but this is how they did the exercise. And I said, you know, you're allowed to say your weaknesses, because sometimes it's hard to remember what works about your organization. So they kept throwing in a weakness, and after a while they stopped throwing in the weaknesses. And then later on, see, the next step is ignore the weaknesses for this purpose. And let's look at the strengths and say which of these are of interest to our prospective donors and other types of funders. And then they squished everything together, and then they highlighted a few key phrases that they thought they needed to highlight. This organization's value proposition is very different from yours because their donors are current members and aspiring members, okay? You're gonna have to get out into the marketplace. When you see the, you know what, I'm going to, over the next week, make short little videos about how to complete this template for yourselves, okay? So let's go back to sharing our I'm sorry, current slide, value. Okay, Now we want to look at the facts. Take notes, guys. If you're looking for individual donors, you want to look at facts like these. How much education does your best donor need to have? Do they have a history of giving? What's would probably be more important for you, since you're not ready yet for major donations, called the Major Gift Program. You want to mention something about if you volunteered in the past or served on a board, you might be great for us. So think about the issues in your value proposition, and then based on facts. So let's take the scholarship plug for a second. Does everybody who donates to the scholarship plug have to be based in your neighborhood, Shedley?
No.
There you go. So zip code doesn't matter, but for Kathy's clients, Kathy, I can't remember this, the Guadalupe people and the Keweenaw people, that if they're located in the river basin or the refuge areas, that's probably better for you, or maybe the whole UP. So think about these things. Why? Because if you're using social media marketing, you can say on Facebook, my prospects have these characteristics. So that's the easy part. Wealth profile is something that simply says, how much money do they give away? How much money do they have, and how much money do they give away? To get that information, you have to use prospect research techniques. There are services that let you do that. They're kind of expensive for startups. There are other ways to do prospect research without prospect research services. And Courtney and I are going to write a short how-to about that. But guess what, folks? Just because somebody is wealthy doesn't mean they are philanthropic. So those of you who may have been thinking, let's land a big one. Let's get Oprah Winfrey. Let's get
Mackenzie Scott.
Let's get Lamar Kendrick. Or let's get this or that major hoop-de-doo celebrity. All of those people are very philanthropic, by the way. But just because someone has money or lives in a higher rent neighborhood or has an expensive house doesn't mean that they're philanthropic. So, and there are many people of modest means who give away a substantial amount of money. This is one of the most important elements in your ideal donor profile. What would motivate someone to support bookleggers or HEP or the scholarship plug? Lived experience is often high on the list. A passion for the cause is high on the list. Aspirations for the future. I would think for the scholarship plug, we would want to be going after the parents of students, especially minority students, to encourage them to get their kids involved. And if they can make modest gifts, so much the better. By the way, you don't always have to get money. You can get volunteer time, you can get expertise, and you can get what are called gifts in kind. Everybody understand what a gift in kind is? Okay. Nobody said they don't, so we'll go on. Now, one way to figure out what their motivations are, that'll be very easy for you, is to speak with your team and guess. I often think that the motivations for your board members and the motive to serve with you, and the motivations for your team members to serve with you, probably mirror the motivations of your ideal donor. What you'll find here is something called suggested prospect interviews. That's another thing I want you to download. And there are 3 questions highlighted. These are great when you start to meet people of greater affluence, where you want to ask, like our example with Pascal, you don't want to ask them for $1,000. You want to ask them for a gift of $10,000, $15,000, $25,000. You have to build a relationship with people before you're ready to ask for gifts like that. So right now, our advice is going to be that the use of your ideal donor profile is for marketing purposes, more than it is for cultivating a specific individual, unless you trip over someone who's got the motivations and the means. Here are examples of some of the open-ended questions. Hello, Frank. After the ordinary getting to know you stuff, what is it that makes you a charitable person? Tell me about yourself and your interest in philanthropy. 2 of my favorite questions, I only put one here, are, if we were to succeed beyond our wildest or beyond your wildest imaginings, what would that look like and why would it be important to you? And then if we had to close our doors, the flip side, what would that mean? And why would that be meaningful, important, upsetting to use? The ideal way to have these conversations is with donors that you already know and like. But if you don't have any donors, guess and work it out with your team, because this is a living document and it's going to evolve. The 4th part of an ideal donor profile is what you don't want, what you want to avoid in a donor. This is one of the most important. The donor wants, the big problems we have in donors are common here. Big talk and no action. They want to give us a lot of money, but the money they want to give us is like they want to go to the scholarship plug and give us $1 million to set up a dental clinic. Sorry, that's not your mission, is it, Shedley? Or they want to give us $500 and get a lot of name recognition. Or they're just selfish, nasty, pig-headed, and so on. Everybody has a lot of fun coming up with these danger signs. Right? Any comments so far?
How would you say we would, because you said we have to build a relationship once we identify a donor that will satisfy or donors that will satisfy our aspired budget that we need.
Right.
How do
Excellent
you,
question. How do you
how would,
start to build a relationship?
what's step one? Identify a donor.
No, no,
What do
no.
I do?
That is not step one.
Okay.
Step one is just what I'm about to come to. The other ways we use the ideal donor profile. So can you wait until I get to that section? Because it's the perfect question here. And Michelle had her hand raised. Michelle, tell
I was
us.
just gonna say that, yeah.
Actually, I think my question, maybe I'll wait. It's more about specifically about funders, because what you were saying about the dental clinic example,
Yeah,
I feel like comes up with grant funders a lot, where they kind of can cause mission drift with some of their requests, but I don't want to
absolutely.
turn the conversation yet, I guess. So I'll wait.
Excellent. Let me see what, I can't remember what the next slide is. Okay. I'm not gonna, while we're talking, I'm gonna look something up, but it's about building your prospect scorecard. I would like to answer Michelle's question, especially in regard to grant making. You guys are probably aware that if you go to a grant making organization, a foundation, especially non-governmental, well, Kathy, maybe one of you can help me out on this. What I'm not a grants expert. I know enough to know that most grants, or virtually every grant that I know of, with rare exceptions, says, these are our grant guidelines. We only support organizations that do these things, or do it these ways, or are only in this part of the country, blah, blah, blah. Courtney, you have more experience with grant guidelines. If you can throw something in here.
Sure. I'd be happy to answer that question. Michelle, so when it comes to grant funders, they have specific guidelines that you need to abide by. So they have specific program initiatives that they're looking for. You sometimes can have a little bit of wiggle room within that area, specific category or program initiative that they're looking for. But also when you remember, they have certain deadlines and certain restrictions that you have to actually follow, and you have to report how you use the funding, how many people you impacted, and there's a lot of metrics that follow with it. Also, as Ellen had mentioned, more and more funders are funding people with current relationships. So that's not saying you can't go and do a cold call to these funders, but you're going to have to start to build a relationship. So if there's an opportunity where you can go see them speak, or they're having some type of engagement where you can get in front of them, or if you can reach out to the program director specifically listed for the program initiative that aligns with your programs, and have a conversation with her or him and say, hi, you know, we're so and so, this is what we do. Do we align with, you know, your current initiatives? And if so, what do you recommend is an appropriate funding amount that we ask for?
I want
So Michelle Lisa has her hand back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I didn't really fully ask my question, because those are those are things I'm familiar with. I understand that process, of course. But my question, I guess, is more specific to situations like because Nathaniel's not here today, but I'm not, because he's at the book fair. But Nathaniel and I started at the Miami Rail about 10 years ago together working. He was the editor and I was the administrator for the organization. And the issue that the Miami Rail ran into was that, and this is also the issue of just at the time, I think everybody being more green than we are now, but continuously getting requests from our current funders to do more programs or newer programs, but then they would give us a grant that was heavily restricted, right? So
Right.
we already have one program that we run, you know, and then, you know, we had like a visiting writers program, and then the Knight Foundation asked us to add more programming, even though our main focus should have been the publication.
Right.
We added more programming and more programming, and to the point
See,
where,
that's what I wanted to get to here.
yeah, that's
Besides deciding if besides deciding if you're, pardon my simple language, a good enough match for the grant guidelines, I want to recommend that you have a set of requirements for the grants that you want to approach. Some of them are there match requirements that are beyond your capacity? If there are, don't even bother with a letter of intent. Are there reporting requirements too heavy? Are they demanding actions that cause mission drift? My recommendation would be that you, in a situation like that, I don't know how to diplomatically say, sorry, Charlie, we ain't doing that, and cease asking them to keep funding you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the concern in the question, because especially in Miami, when you have like very particular organizations that give the right amount of funding to keep things going, you can end up in a situation where you're not being funded. Like the Knight Foundation, for example, has been really big on this concept of like digital. It's been kind of vague, but they'll just be like, what digital initiatives are you introducing to your organization? And it's like, we give away books. And like,
Yeah.
we can't technically make books digital, but we want people to hold books in their hands. And there's little things, like we did something like story time for grownups, where we would have people read stories online, just like as like a fun thing during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But we can't overexert ourselves in doing things like that. But they were one of our main funders for a very long time. And they still are right now, thankfully. But as they keep asking for more digital, a large amount of our money could go away completely if the Knight Foundation decides we're not digital enough, but we give away books. It's just not realistic. So I mean, I think it's obviously like seeking out other funders as well. We're doing that, but it's hard to keep the funder if in that case, I guess.
This is one of the, let me just say this. There are some large organizations that succeed very well on almost entirely grants-based funding, but they're rare. So my recommendation, and I think the other lunatics in the program, Kathy and Glenn will agree with me, is that you also have to have individual giving. And there are many reasons for that. But the first one is, if you have a lot of individual donors, even if they're making small gifts of $120 a year, you know, the recurring donors like you might invest in the local public radio station, it doesn't hurt you to lose a bunch of those. Certainly doesn't hurt you to lose one of them. And many people who start to give at a low level, attend an event, give on an email campaign or a social media campaign, download your stuff, do stuff that indicates their interest. They're now no longer a cold lead, they're a warm lead. And in Booklegger's relationship with the Knight Foundation, since they've been supporting you for a long time, I would recommend that you schedule a chat with the program or conversation meeting with your program manager and negotiate. because you can't allow a funder to push you away from your mission, no matter how much money they give you.
So here's where I want to say how I'm thinking how lucky Nathaniel is to have a board member like Michelle Lisa who understands this whole business of mission and focus and, you know, funding what we're actually trying to do here. Because those conversations can often go wrong in the boardroom, right? When somebody's looking at dollar signs, you know, the board members might start saying, well, let's go after that. And that's how you get mission creep. So, you know, glad that you know, Michelle Lisa is there to be clear, and that when they do meet with that program officer or whoever at the foundation to say, you know, we can't apply for the next grant if it's going to take us off mission, that comes with a board decision, and it
That's
isn't
right.
just, you know, staff trying to say that. So,
And thank you, Kathy.
yeah.
One of the things I heard there really inspired me. Excuse me, everybody. I have a little problem with my throat. Being able to say to a funder, we can't accept this grant because it takes us off mission. Just even saying it myself makes me feel powerful, makes me feel empowered. I used to talk about this whole question of this whole issue about the ideal donor profile as follows, and I have to bring it back into the conversation. We're always worried about whether or not the prospect is going to think we're good enough for them. I want you to turn that inside out and say, is this prospect good enough for us? You're in charge of the way you fund your mission. You are faithful to your mission, and you don't want a funder of any stripe, an individual donor, especially a major donor, who might think they can twist your mission to their favor, or even a corporate sponsor. If it isn't a good match around the mission, it's not a good match for either person, for either entity. That's why I'm being so rigorous in focusing on your ideal donor profile. Now, what I want you to end up with is something that looks kind of like this. Nuts. I'm an idiot. I want you to be able to document it. Okay? There are many reasons for having something documented, and the biggest reason is that you'll make a mess of it if you don't. After a while, it'll start looking like something else. You won't remember what the criteria are. I'm sorry. I thought I had everything queued up and I didn't. Oh, it's a shame about me, really. All righty. Come on, honey.
Are folks beginning to appreciate this concept of an ideal donor profile, this idea that by knowing what kind of people make ideal donors for us, that can help inform our communications, our decisions about fundraising planning, all of the things that we need to do to get ready for fundraising?
Yeah, that's
all
a
right,
really good
People are
question.
dropping that into the chat. Thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
What kind of answers are we getting? 100%.
People are saying they're getting it.
Okay, wonderful. As I said, this takes some work. Now, here's an example. This is as generic as you could get, okay? And this is for a major gift. You might have different criteria for a grant maker or a corporate sponsor. But right now, what we come up with in that exercise about your value proposition and coming up with the motivations for giving, the value statements, you'll see here, these are very simple. Donor wants the community to be a better place. Donor wants to see future generations avoid the challenges our organization addresses. So we decide on, you and your team come up with these criteria. This is just like, does the dress fit you, right? And you score each of these elements on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the closest match to this statement. So what we have here is a score of 22 points regarding value statements. Then we asked, does the donor have the capacity to give a major gift? Well, we kind of think so. So we gave him a 3. And has given medium-sized gifts to us or like organizations over the past 5 years. We give them a 4. And you can read these things. I believe this sample, both of these samples, the blank one and the sample one, are in your homework. If they're not, I'll make sure you get them. So we've got a total of 44 points here. The danger signs, let's change one of the danger signs. The donor wants to support an area the organization does not currently serve or provide. So let's use Booklegger's example and pretend the Knight Foundation is an individual donor. Sorry, we can only go to 5. So the total score here is 17 points. So we look up where 17 would go. Well, it would go here. This prospect just made themselves a C candidate. If their rank is C, they don't justify a lot of effort, which means your time. And if it's lower than C, if it's 0 to 10, I would basically keep their name on your newsletter list and let them unsubscribe at some point. If the scores were higher, and see how simple it is to change the scores. Well, that didn't work. There's something screwed up in the. So that's 25 points. It would add 3 points, so they'd still be a C. I'll check the calculations here. So I want to hope that you understand how handy it might be to have a document like this when you're looking at a funder who's got the ability to offer you a larger amount of money. So that would either be a grant maker or an individual who can give you such and such a sum of money. And you guys are the ones who decide what is the sum of money that makes it worth it to you. That's called the floor of the gift.
Ellen, we have a question from Pascal in the chat, and she's asking, is there a dollar amount that delineates between a major gift and just a regular gift?
That's what you get to decide. There are many options here. If you go to the Association of Fundraising Professionals, they say it's $1,000. If you go to Donor Search, the prospect research service I know the best, it's $5,000. If you go and ask the board of the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital in Broward County, which is part of Broward Health, I believe, it's $25,000. If you go to World Vision, which is a global nonprofit raising billions and billions of dollars, it's $100,000. And they have another category called mid-major. That's 25 to just under 25,000 to just under 100,000. So what you need to decide based on the overall amount of money you want to raise and the capacity of your fundraising team to raise that money is how big does the gift have to be, or the investment or the grant, for you to be willing to spend personal time.
And I want to point out, Alan, you just answered a question that Michelle Lisa had put in the chat without even knowing you were doing it. But it absolutely, where the major donor line is for you can absolutely depend on your overall budget and how much you're trying to bring in. For some groups, for some very small groups, 250, $500 is a big donation.
It's a big donation.
And that's a great place to start a program. So
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking though, not though, but I mean,
yeah. In addition,
I'm thinking in addition, I like that. In addition, I'm thinking back of the politicians, when it all of a sudden it became very okay, just give, whatever you can, give 10, give 15, and now these politicians were raising, supposedly raising all this money.
There was a part of my deck that I wanted to share with you that has to do with that kind of giving. Sorry.
Let me say we have 1 minute left of our time
I'm not
together
gonna go
today.
back.
So
the heck with my deck. The heck with my deck.
we want to start into some wrap up. We might stay for a couple minutes.
The critical thing here is when you have an ideal donor profile, you have what's called a donor persona. So language on your homepage and on program pages has to occur that resonates with the ideal donor profile. That and you have to have digital marketing, email marketing. If you don't have a big email marketing list, you need to build one. One way to do that, ask the people who are on your list, even if there's only 17 of them, send it to a friend. And your social media marketing has to do much more than say, we exist and give us money on Giving Tuesday and come to our event. So you have to take donor motivations, donor language, work it into your search engine optimization. What are donors, what are prospective funders looking for that will attract, drive them to your website? And how do you get followers on social media? So the progress is always make people aware of you, gather followers, turn those followers into subscribers. Your website has to have what I call contact capture forms. Tell me more. My name is Ellen Bristol. My email address is such and such. You can reach me by text at blah. So they know you exist. They follow you. They subscribe. They start to give. They give modestly. They give to an appeal. a social media appeal, a giving day appeal, and so on. And then we steward all of those people with thank you letters and little newslettery kinds of things. The newsletter doesn't have to be gigantic. Perhaps it could be a quarterly report. This quarter, we served so many people and solved so many health problems and gave away so many COVID testing kits. I'm just making up what you guys do. So I want you to take these questions and make Google your best friend. I've given you a lot of questions that I Googled, like there's more stuff about, download the 25 best templates for this, that, or the other that has to do with the ideal donor profile. What I really appreciate you doing is sending me questions about any of the templates by email. I will
or within the community
in a forum, please. Sorry. And everybody will have access to the answer. And I wanted to turn this into a 2-session thing because there's so much to cover here, but we're not going to do that. Come back on January 5th, post questions in the forum. I will be posting additional little videos about each of the templates and about any questions you send to me. We've run over. Thank you very much for your interest and your understanding and all of your great questions. Kathy, you want to?
Glenn is next. So we have next week off because of the Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States. And so when we gather next week, so 2 weeks from today, Glenn is going to be presenting on how to tell your story. So the material for that will be available next Tuesday at 2. So you can get in to the course next Tuesday at 2 Eastern and get the material for the class that happens week after next. We're going to be, Alan and Glenn and I are all going to be in that community in circle. So send us your questions either privately or post them in the forum. Shedley has found out she can get a whole bylaws review out of it. She can get guidance on finances, any kind of thing, because she's figured out that she can post a question right there. And the three of us we got your back and we're going to answer those questions. So hope to see more of you active there as well. I can stay for a few more minutes and I think Ellen can too. If there's anybody that has a question to wrap up today's session, we can turn off the recording.
I'm happy to stay for another 10-15 minutes.
Otherwise, we can let folks go. So thanks, everybody. Wilfred, I'm going to be calling you soon, so watch your phone for me.
Gloria's here. Who wants to? Everybody unmute. Thanks, Michelle Lisa.
So folks are welcome to go if you like, or stick around if you've got questions. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Hey, Ellen. Thank you so much for this. I have a question or wanted your opinion. Okay. So if our donation budget from individual budget, so we have a donation bracket for individual donors, and then we have a bracket for corporate donors, like the bigger packages. So what would you think, what would you like to receive, like if you were donating $100 or $500?
I would like to receive nothing. I would like to receive an acknowledgement, a thank you letter, and a tax receipt. And that's what I want to receive immediately. 6 months down the road, I would love it if somebody on your board called me and said, hey, I'm Joe Dokes, and I serve on the board of the Scholarship Plug, and I want to personally thank you for supporting our cause. You know why I want that other thing? And I want it later? Because I want to be encouraged to give to you again next year.
Okay.
I also want your board members to get comfortable talking to donors. So there's two things here. Donor retention depends on your ability to engage the donors and make them feel important. And if you have a bunch of donors who don't match your ideal donor profile, who are just filled with danger signs, they're probably going to take you to school and give you a hard time when you try and thank them and tell you everything you're doing wrong. So who needs it? So you know, I don't think we can tell our story unless we understand who we're telling the story to.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
does that help you? I think we're,
And I think being in touch with people along the way so that you're not just got your hand out once a year at the end of the year, but some sort of regular updates on what's going on with the organization.
A lot
That's
of
what I like
org-
to see as a donor.
a lot of
Something between the
organizations,
thank you note and the next appeal.
a lot of organizations set up special newsletters or communiques that are just for those who have given in the past.
That's a good idea.
It's a donor, let's call it a donor newsletter. But I want to go a little bit deeper into this, Shedley. I think NPR, National Public Radio, has given us all a bad idea that every gift has to be accompanied with a tchotchke, a gimme bag, a toy. You know, when I go to conferences, well, I used to go to a lot of conferences. I avoid them for the most part. And I'd come home with a gimme bag filled with garbage.
Right.
400 pages of glossy paper that I never read and then throw away, and you can't recycle it. And all these little toys and key rings, and you know, I've stuffed my face with more candy than I can tolerate. People who understand philanthropy want to say, why are you spending the money on that? Spend it on your mission.
Yeah.
Don't spend it giving me crap, frankly. I'd much rather you set up a special online meeting for our donors. And give the donors a forum where you bring in an expert and you bring in a testimonial, and then you have a conversation about, we're thinking about going in this direction, or introducing such. Michelle has so many tote bags. You know, I am in the process of trying to get rid of all my tote bags. So there's a million ways to keep your donors engaged. Ask for their opinions. Give them an opportunity to get to know one another. The author of a very, very good book called The Generosity Crisis, Nathan Chappell, talks about the concept of radical connection with your donors. The fact is, and this is important to you guys who are running emerging and grassroots organizations, more money than ever is being raised. Last count, $500 billion of philanthropic money went to the nonprofit sector. You know what else is happening? The number of households giving has shrunk dramatically. And that's bad news, because if you're Mackenzie Scott or the Gates Foundation or the Knight Foundation, you can interfere, even unconsciously, with the organization's path.
But you know, yeah, that's kind of my question. I mean, it's great. I'm going to identify but where do you where do you go? So my network is the people I know, my family, and all the nonprofits that I deal with, and of course the community that I serve.
Right.
So
So
how do you find an
here are a few
approach?
very practical suggestions, and these have meaning for all of you. And I'm gonna put it in Miami, Miami, Fort Lauderdale terms and South Florida terms. So translate this to your location. You don't have to be a member of the Greater Miami or the Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce. It's expensive, but you can pay to go to one of their luncheons with a jillion business cards and somebody by your side, in your case, Pascal, like Samarie, who strikes me as a networker extraordinaire. Just wander around and introduce yourself to people. That's what happens at a Chamber of Commerce meeting. Get to know somebody who belongs to a Rotary Club. Maybe get somebody who's a Rotary Club member and get them on your board. Rotary Club members have to participate in community and civic engagement. And you can almost always get somebody from a Rotary Club to get you on the agenda of a luncheon. So you go to one of the meetings and they give you 5 minutes to introduce your nonprofit. You probably do the same thing at the Kiwanis Club. But the most important thing is to use digital marketing. If somebody from the Haitian community in our neck of the woods is unsure about how to find healthcare, and they Google, how do I find affordable healthcare in Little Haiti or in Miami or in, Goulds or near me, your name should come up on the first page, if at all possible.
Can I ask, Ellen, on December 8th, you're giving a workshop for this group called Attracting Followers and Converting Donors. Are you going to be getting more deeply into this topic
Much more
that
deeply
day?
into all of it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that one because I've always wondered how to do that too, Pascal.